My aunt called me too fat to succeed. So I started a fitness brand, lost 80 pounds, and made my first million. Now she wants a discount on my program. So I sent her a promo code that doesn't work. There's a particular pitch in a woman's voice when she wants to hurt you, but wrap it in lace, that sugary venom so many women of my family mastered. My Aunt Lorna had perfected the tone. She wielded it like a sculptor's chisel, never crude, never loud, just precise enough to leave hairline fractures no one else could see but me. "You're smart," she would say at Thanksgiving, her mouth curled in a lacquered smirk while scooping buttery yams onto her plate. "But no one's going to take a fat girl seriously." Laughter would roll across the table like tumbleweeds, awkward and dry, the kind that didn't quite know whether it belonged to a joke or a truth too bitter to swallow. I was 16. I chewed slow and didn't meet her eyes. I knew better than to argue with a woman who'd decided her cruelty was a gift of honesty. Those words didn't vanish with the pie crust crumbs. They burrowed, deep, like splinters that shifted each time I bent down to tie my shoes, or when I stepped onto the scale and watched the numbers blink with dispassionate finality. They were there when I tried on dresses in cold mall fitting rooms, when I laughed too loud at school because it distracted from the soft folds of my belly, and when I skipped pool parties to avoid the terror of being seen. Her voice haunted my silence like a whispered dare. Too fat to succeed. It wasn't just body shaming. It was the branding of a failure before I had ever tried. And when I cried, quietly, late at night, face pressed into the cotton of my pillow to muffle the sound, she told me I was being too sensitive, as if my emotions were another symptom of excess. When I stopped crying, stopped reacting altogether, she called it guilt, as if silence was a confession. But what she didn't know was that silence can also be preparation. I wasn't waiting for her approval. I was storing her insults like kindling. I didn't run toward the desperation of starvation diets or the thin-glossed promises of celebrity fitness fads. I wasn't here to carve myself into a smaller, more palatable version of myself just to earn her clumsy applause. Instead, I retreated into study. I absorbed. I researched human biology, muscle groups, metabolic resistance, nutrition beyond the surface of calories. My nights became stitched together by textbooks, training videos, sweat-slicked resistance bands, and the ache of progress measured not in pounds lost but limits shattered. In a garage that still smelled faintly of oil and mildew, I built something no one expected. Not just a body reborn, but a brand forged from resilience. It started small. Resistance bands and workout videos recorded on an old iPhone, duct taped to a tripod. My early supporters were girls like me, unseen, underestimated, and tired of chasing validation that always moved like a mirage. They didn't want to be skinny, they wanted to be strong. Strong enough to not care. Strong enough to take up space unapologetically. The algorithms caught fire. My follower count exploded. My tutorials became gospel in group chats and dorm rooms. I launched an app, no frills, just results, and it blew through download records in its first week. Then came the merch line. Sculpting gloves, smart scales, protein blends formulated with obsessive precision. 3 sellouts, 1 viral challenge, 6 figures overnight. I remember the moment it all aligned, sunlight slicing through the blinds, the notification tone like a pulse from the universe itself, 6 zeros. Digital proof that I'd become the kind of success no one could ignore. It was surreal. And almost exactly 15 minutes later, her name appeared in my DMS. Aunt Lorna. Her message oozed that curated blend of self-congratulation and false humility. "Sweetheart, I always knew you had it in you. So proud of you. Would love to try your program. Any chance I could get a family discount?" I stared at the screen, coffee forgotten in my hand. My fingers didn't tremble. My heart didn't race. There was no fury, no gloating thrill, just an exquisite, bone-deep certainty. I typed the response slowly, crafting each word with the care she had never afforded me. "Sure thing. Use this promo code, not yours." 100. I hit send and didn't look back. The code, of course, didn't work. It never would. Just like her praise. It was invalid. Just like her validation. A ghost currency from someone who'd spent years bankrupting my self-worth and now wanted to buy a seat at my table with counterfeit smiles. I didn't block her. I didn't respond when she asked why it wasn't working. Some messages deserve to echo. The truth is, I never built this for her. I built it for the girl I used to be. The one who stood in department store mirrors wishing she could unzip her body and step into someone else's. The one who wore hoodies in 90-degree weather to hide arms she thought no one should see. That girl is gone. In her place stands someone who walks into meetings wearing her own brand, arms cut like sculpture, eyes sharp with purpose. And the funniest part? My real customers never needed a discount. They didn't wait until I was profitable to support me. They bought at full price, bragged to their friends, left glowing reviews, tagged me in their transformation photos with captions that screamed power. And my aunt? She believed in me only when the commas started stacking up in my bank account. When she realized I made more before lunch than she did in an entire fiscal year. That's when she saw me. Not when I cried. Not when I struggled to do a single push-up on a hardwood floor slick with determination. Not when I poured myself into this business one failed prototype at a time. She saw me when I didn't need to be seen anymore, too fat to succeed. Now, success has muscle. It wears tailored athleisure and carries my logo on its chest. It shows up in studio lighting, in customer testimonials, in partnership deals signed with pen clicks like thunder. My story isn't a revenge arc. It's a reclamation, not a rise from ashes, but an emergence from a body buried under decades of other people's projections. And I'm just getting started. There's a certain type of silence that follows success, a heavy, observing hush that clings to every movement like steam on a mirror. It's not admiration. Not exactly. It's more like curiosity sharpened into suspicion. People watched me now. Not just followed. Watched. Eyes trailed me in airports, in boutique gyms where trainers used to glance right past me, in boardrooms where I was the youngest, and often the only woman, seated at the glass table. They all watched, wondering how a girl who once couldn't run a mile now owned a fitness empire that made legacy brands twitch in discomfort. But they didn't understand the science of transformation. Not the physical, but the psychological. You see, there's something potent about being underestimated your entire life. When people expect little, your victories come wrapped in thunder. Every step I took was deliberate. My schedule was war-planned. Mornings began before dawn, not out of romantic discipline, but necessity. Before the emails, before the numbers, before the weight of other people's expectations returned like gravity. I started with myself. Weighted vest. Silence. The sharp inhale of cold air on a run through the city that used to feel too big for me. Now, the sidewalks bent under my stride. And still, her voice lingered. It's strange how even when you've shed 80 pounds, launched an international brand, and tripled your net worth in under 2 years, a single sentence from your past can echo louder than your entire present. No one's going to take a fat girl seriously. The words had aged, but they hadn't disappeared. They clung to the walls of my mind like peeling wallpaper, barely visible but impossible to ignore. Her voice would slither back during moments of pause, just before a product launch, in the quiet before going live on a broadcast, when I checked my reflection in the mirror not to admire but to analyze. She still lived there, less like a villain now, more like a ghost. And I'd stopped trying to exorcise her. I let her stay. Let her watch. Let her see everything she swore I'd never become. It wasn't just her, though. There were others. Family members who'd laughed along with her, now liking every post on my feed. Childhood friends who once offered me their untouched crusts and said, "You're still hungry?" now asked if I'd mentor their startup ideas. Even my mother had shifted. Once she stayed quiet during Aunt Lorna's passive-aggressive tirades, hands folded in her lap, eyes darting between us like a referee too afraid to blow the whistle. Now she spoke in proud declarations at church luncheons, bragging about her daughter's interview with Forbes as if she'd always believed. I didn't confront her. Some things don't need confrontation, just distance. I remember the first time I saw someone wearing my brand on the street. I was in Chicago for a leadership summit, walking back from a morning lift session, hoodie pulled low, earbuds in. And there she was. A girl, maybe 19, in one of my Sculpt Tech compression jackets. She didn't notice me. She was too focused, jogging with a rhythm that said she had somewhere to be. Her form wasn't perfect, but her determination, unmistakable. I stopped walking and watched her disappear into the crowd, heart thudding with a strange mixture of pride and disbelief. That moment stayed with me longer than any investor handshake or viral trend spike, because that was the proof. Not in numbers, not in graphs. In her. In people choosing strength with my name stitched across their shoulders. But success, like weight, brings its own gravity. It reshapes the way people touch you. Conversations became transactions. Compliments felt like bait. Every new connection had the scent of calculation. I learned to navigate it, not with cynicism but clarity. I built boundaries like walls of tempered glass, transparent, visible, unbreakable. My team grew from 3 freelancers and a cousin who handled shipping to a fully staffed operation with departments and KPIs and international shipping logistics. We were a machine, sleek and unstoppable, but I never let us lose our heartbeat. There were moments, though, late at night, when the inbox finally quieted and the dopamine of achievement wore off. When I wondered what it might have felt like to be seen from the beginning. Not pitied, not doubted, just seen. What would I have become if I hadn't had to bleed for it? But I didn't linger in those thoughts long, because the truth is, without the fight, I wouldn't have sharpened. And I didn't want to be soft anymore. Not in my ambition, not in my identity, not in the face of people like her. Speaking of her, Aunt Lorna had grown bold. After the failed promo code, she posted a not-so-subtle jab on Facebook. Some people forget where they came from once they get a little fame. Classic. As if she'd been the soil that helped me grow. She was the drought I survived. Her followers, mostly other middle-aged relatives and old co-workers, co-signed the bitterness with likes and comments dripping with vague, shared contempt. I didn't reply. I just watched, observed, let her tantrum echo in her own empty chamber. A few weeks later, I launched a new campaign. No apologies, just results. It was sharp, visceral, unapologetically aimed at people who'd been told they were too much, too heavy, too loud, too stubborn, too broken. The ads ran with women of every size slamming medicine balls in slow motion, voiceovers narrating words they'd once been told, ending with them shattering mirrors, sprinting through smoke, or standing defiantly on scales that blinked strong instead of a number. It hit harder than I expected. Sales surged, subscriptions doubled, and the messages poured in. One stood out. A girl, barely 15, sent a video. She was crying, not out of sadness but gratitude. Her aunt had told her something cruel, eerily familiar, and she almost gave up. Then she found me, found us. And now she was lifting. Slowly, clumsily, but lifting. I didn't cry watching it. I felt something deeper than tears, an anchoring, a recentering. The legacy I was building wasn't just mine. It was inherited by everyone who found power through it. And my aunt? She still hadn't learned. She still believed she could shape reality through sarcasm and condescension. But she couldn't touch this version of me. She didn't have the tools. I was carved from her rejection, but I wasn't defined by it. I wore armor now, stitched in perseverance, plated in discipline, reinforced by every no I had ever heard. And every morning, as I pulled on my gear, laced up my trainers, and stepped back into the grind, I smiled at the irony. She was right about one thing. No one takes a fat girl seriously. So I stopped being that. It's a funny thing, momentum. Once you catch it, really catch it, it doesn't feel like running anymore, it feels like flight. Not the kind with feathers and wind, but the kind where the world finally stops resisting you. You stop pushing through doors that were never meant for you and start building the damn building instead. I had spent years being the girl who watched her life from behind glass, waiting to be welcomed in, to be validated, to be told she was worthy of the space she occupied. But somewhere between the sweat-soaked mats of my garage and the polished oak boardrooms I now walked into without flinching, that girl evaporated. My company had become a force. Not a trend, not a moment, an ecosystem. The brand, once scribbled on a notepad stained with protein shake residue, now held equity across digital platforms, private gyms, corporate wellness programs, and international product deals. I wasn't just seen. I was studied, emulated, quoted. Features in major publications no longer surprised me. Neither did celebrity endorsements or offers to license my workouts to television networks. The app had passed 3 million downloads. Our 4th supplement line was breaking records, and I'd just secured a partnership with a global sportswear conglomerate that once ghosted me when I pitched them as a nobody with a dream and a prototype in a Ziploc bag. The money was endless, but that had never been the point. For me, it had always been about ownership. Not of land, not of assets, but of narrative. My own. The right to write it without apology or permission. And that's why I knew exactly what I had to do when the final message came from Aunt Lorna. It was a letter, handwritten. I knew it was hers from the cursive that looked like it had been carved out of judgment. No return address, of course. Only the ink of someone still pretending she was the victim of my success. She'd been diagnosed with something. She didn't name it, but the subtext was unmistakable. The sharp edges were gone from her words. She called me impressive, not ambitious. She said she regretted some things she said when I was younger. Claimed she was proud, that she'd always rooted for me in her own way. But the sentence that stayed with me wasn't any of that. It was the last line. I was just trying to protect you from a world that isn't kind to girls who look like we did. We. That word hit me with a thud. It was the closest she'd ever come to admitting we were the same. That under her polished contempt was a mirror she couldn't stand to look into. And I saw her not as the villain of my origin story, but as a girl who had probably been broken before she ever learned to speak with cruelty. But recognition is not reconciliation. I didn't write back. Instead, I did something better. At the next live event, a packed auditorium with over 8,000 attendees and millions streaming online, I closed the keynote with a story. My story. I didn't name her. I didn't have to. I spoke about the weight of words, the echo of insults dressed as wisdom, the scars left by the people who claimed to be protecting you, when they were really projecting their own fears. I told them about the moment that changed me, the phrase that haunted and then shaped me. Too fat to succeed. And how it became the most important lie I'd ever been told. Because in disproving it, I had built an empire. When the crowd rose, the applause was deafening, but what moved me wasn't the noise. It was the faces, thousands of them, some tear-streaked, some beaming, all reflecting versions of who I used to be. The mirror was no longer something I feared. It was the stage itself. After the event, backstage, I stood alone for a moment, letting the energy settle around me like ash after a fire. My assistant asked if I wanted to address the letter. I shook my head. Some stories don't need sequels, I said. They just need closure. And closure wasn't a phone call. It wasn't forgiveness, not in the traditional sense. Closure was owning the space that once rejected me, wearing my old wounds like medals, not because I wanted to display pain, but because I'd bled into purpose. Closure was smiling into a camera while holding a mic with my name on it. It was launching a scholarship program for girls in underserved communities who were told their bodies were barriers. It was funding wellness centers in schools where mirrors didn't lie. They told the truth, the whole truth, that strength is not a shape and worth is not a weight. I built a final product, one I'd never sell, just gift. A limited edition apparel line, one piece only. A single hoodie. The back read, an embroidered white script over deep charcoal cotton. Not too fat, just too powerful for your limits. I boxed it carefully. No promo code, no letter, no explanation. I sent it to her, not as revenge, as record. This was how the story ends. Not with vindication or vengeance, but with victory so absolute that silence becomes the loudest note. The kind of ending that doesn't need fanfare because it is the fanfare. I had nothing left to prove. Not to her, not to the world, not even to the girl I used to be. She'd already seen enough. And she was proud.